Good evening, I'm Jason Vio. Katarina is away tonight. Here's what's making news right now.
It's amazing. Every year, it gives me chills. And seeing we still have so far to fight.
These matters are serious, long-standing hurts that my people have suffered here in Canada.
Ultimately, what we're fighting for is to make these permanent, and for the Ontario government to make accessible housing a human right.
Thanks for joining us. The staffing shortages at Ontario hospitals continue to be a major issue in healthcare. We've seen emergency rooms strained and at least one intensive care unit in the province close over the long weekend. With another around the corner, a solution is desperately needed. So where is the provincial government on all of this? The CBC's Ali Chiasson has that story.
It's summer and hospitals are stretched thin. We're heading into fall and winter, which are already challenging seasons for viruses such as influenza and, of course, COVID.
There are going to be additional pressures on the healthcare system then, and it's not like we're going to magically have tens and tens of thousands of healthcare providers suddenly back on the job before then.
It's becoming clear this is not a one-solution issue.
It's not just nurses, although nurses are a major component here. It's the other allied healthcare professionals, physicians as well, and this is significantly impacting the delivery of healthcare.
According to the Ontario Nurses Association, about 25 different hospitals in Ontario were forced to scale back sections of their facilities on the long weekend due to staff shortages.
We're calling for Doug Ford and Minister Jones, number one, to show up, provide a frank assessment of the healthcare system.
The Ontario Liberal Party held a press conference today pointing out the current government's absence on the issue, aside from providing statements about how they've hired 10,500 healthcare workers since the beginning of the pandemic.
And let's talk about all of the solutions at our disposal.
The Office of Health Minister Sylvia Jones has declined another one of our requests for an interview today. So we'll continue to ask frontline healthcare workers how they see it.
You know, I think short term, the first thing I would say as a family physician and a primary care provider, I would just remind people out there that if they have a health problem, please contact us first.
So patients triaging themselves before crowding the emergency rooms with non-emergencies.
As a leader, I'll try my best to engage in conversations, with my hospital, with my family practice to try to, create a situation where we're providing the best care with our patients. And I just hope that over time, this feedback is sort of, taken into account and we can see some improvements, because at the end of the day, we just want to provide the best care possible for our patients and our communities. And when the system is under such strain, it can become very challenging.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
And locally, officials at Windsor Regional Hospital say they don't foresee a scenario where either of its two emergency departments would need to shut down. In an emailed statement to CBC News, the hospital says, particularly since the next closest large market emergency department in London is roughly 2 hours away, we have an obligation to remain open no matter what it takes. Since April, the hospital says it's been battling long wait times in the ER. This afternoon, wait times at both Windsor hospitals ranged from an average of 3 hours to 4.5 hours. Well, the Pride flag has been raised in Windsor, marking the 30th anniversary of the festival. Today was the official kickoff to Pride Week that includes activities, music, and a parade in an effort to bring the community closer together.
It means everything to me. Like, I didn't grow up here, and where I grew up, there was no community to find a place like this here, like a community, it means so much, like to have people to talk to and to have people to look up to even. It means everything, yeah.
It blows my socks off every year. It's the amount of people that come out every year, yearly, and seeing everybody come to the festival. It's just incredible.
It gives me a sense of self, so it's a lot. It's brought me out from a lot of dark places, so it's nice to have the people that make you feel like yourself around.
I think we're gaining good traction, and everybody is starting to get respected, and that's what our biggest thing is everybody respect each other and love one another.
There's a lot of good shows actually this year. There's going to be the glitter ball, there's going to be bowling, the parade of course on Sunday. Lots to look forward to.
it's a labor of love to myself and the board members. We do it because we love to do it, and we want to try and do everything we can to bring the community together.
And the 2022 Windsor Essex Pride Fest Parade starts this Sunday at 11 in the morning. CBC Windsor will be there celebrating as the parade makes its way down Ottawa Street to Lansbury Park. The City of Windsor is investing $2.4 million into making city-owned facilities more energy efficient. 12 locations, including libraries, fire halls, and community centers, will get solar panels installed. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens says doing this will also help out the new battery plant.
This one announcement, these 12 projects, will help save power, provide more supply, and have more power to the equivalent of 100 homes. So you talk about people coming home and plugging in, we'll now have more power. And as people continue to adopt these for their own home rooftops, like I have at my house, as businesses continue to do that, and as cities and governments continue to do that, we're going to see an increase in supply that will help offset the demand that will naturally come with the electric vehicle future that we'll be building right here in the City of Windsor.
Now, the city doesn't expect any pause in service while the panels are installed. Work is set to be completed next summer. Well, it's been more than a year since Greyhound stopped operations, and Windsorites looking to get to Toronto had very few options, but that will soon change. Starting on Thursday, FlixBus is adding Windsor to its route. Buses will stop in London, Toronto, Hamilton, and Ottawa as well, and they'll depart from Transit Windsor's downtown bus terminal. Trips range in cost from about $19 to $75, depending on the destination. When a Windsor woman learned earlier this year that some government-funded rent subsidy programs would come to an end, she thought about the catastrophic impact the cuts would have on people with disabilities who rely on them. Sarah Bondi has a disabling medical condition and is speaking up, even though she does not anticipate the situation will affect her.
People with disabilities obviously rely on these subsidies to remain independent and part of their communities. They rely on this for jobs and for jobs and everything else. So that we really need these subsidies to continue. And I was very passionate about that because we've fought as a disabled community have fought very hard for our independence, and it's like we have to fight for every scrap of independence we can get, and for this to be brought to our attention was very scary and very devastating.
The Ontario Priorities Housing Initiative, which is set to expire, is now being funded on a year-to-year basis. And people who use wheelchairs say they want to be allowed to remain seated in their mobility devices when they fly on airplanes. But air safety regulations currently prohibit passengers from sitting in their own wheelchairs. CBC Toronto's Ryan Patrick Jones has the story of a Kitchener man who is calling on airlines and federal regulators to change that.
Frustration, shock, and anger. That's how James Glasbergen, a wheelchair user, describes these moments after he was dropped to the floor of an airplane earlier this year.
They dropped me on the floor. It was like a 2 or 3 foot drop, and all of a sudden my bottom hit the floor with a big thud.
It took 3 minutes for multiple staff and another passenger to get Glasbergen in a seat upright. Federal regulations require wheelchair users to transfer into airplane seats, and wheelchairs must be stowed away with luggage. Melissa Graham says she's gotten off multiple flights to find her wheelchair damaged.
It's incredibly frustrating. It makes flying in general very stressful.
Both say negative and common experiences like these could be avoided if passengers could sit in their wheelchairs when flying.
If they can figure out how to fly a helicopter on Mars, they can figure out how to get wheelchair users sitting in their wheelchairs safely on airplanes.
I just started doing research.
This Texas-based advocate proposes securement systems like those used in vans and buses to secure wheelchairs in the passenger cabin. Options include seatbelt-like straps or a bolt locking system. She says initial crash tests suggest they can meet the same safety standards as airplane seats.
What the FAA has outlined for us as what would be safe has passed.
Canada's air travel regulator says any system that would allow passengers to remain in wheelchairs while flying would first need approval from the U.S. Federal Aviation Authority. The U.S. Transportation Department recently promised it's working on it. For Glasbergen, that day can't come soon enough.
It's not something that's going to take weeks or days because, you know, some obviously cabin reconfiguration might have to be done, and I understand all that, but I guess I just want to see progress.
Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
More than a year after Canada proclaimed August 1st as Emancipation Day, a local African-Canadian heritage consultant is renewing her call for Ottawa to make a formal apology. Elise Harding-Davis wants political leaders here in Canada to say sorry for the country's history of slavery and its intergenerational harms. She says it's shameful to ignore years of calls for a proper apology.
It would mean so much in terms of giving African Canadians a feeling of belonging, actually belonging. And from there, we have the grounds to work on getting better paths for actually finding equity in the things that I mentioned, jobs and housing, and knowing that we'd be safe not to have ugly racism thrown in our face at every turn. And it does happen, regardless of what anyone wants to say. That does happen. And it has to be dealt with by going back to the root of the cause of the racism and prejudice, which was slavery.
And in Guelph, a Black heritage group marked Emancipation Day by destroying offensive and racist household items from Canada's past. The CBC's Chris Reyes has that story.
A Valentine's Day card, a cookie jar, children's books, statues.
This is blackface image stream, black minstrel. And to think that this image itself was someone in Guelph, and this happened in our city.
What links them all is the trauma they caused the Black community.
It was really painful to take hold some of these imageries and think that these were how my ancestors are depicted. And not even just our ancestors, this is how I have been depicted in my life.
The items were donated to the Guelph Black Heritage Society over the years. What an afternoon celebration of Emancipation Day, between moments of song and poetry, a powerful moment of healing.
And I feel like it should be this photo because it needs to go. Let's get some cheers around.
The items were burned and smashed.
When I saw Queen smashing that lawn jockey cookie jar, it was like absolutely amazing. Feeling the heat from this fire, it's just a release of our energy. It's absolutely beautiful. We feel a release.
Even today. That release felt by others in the crowd who threw their own pages into the fire.
Anybody else want to rip? Come on and rip.
It lets out anger and resentment. That's why I went up there.
The thought of it burning a book is difficult for me. But I would like to go quietly and burn some pages now, because the things that we were taught were so dreadful.
For me, sort of just standing back, that was not about me. And I saw the faces of people who were getting rid of the hurt and the pain.
Organizers say they hope the event will provide healing, joy, but also awareness about the work that needs to continue.
So we need to make sure that people are still aware and that they keep it in their consciousness that that racism is not something that we tolerate, and that's something that we need to work towards eliminating.
Work they hope will be energized.
There's something about a fire and a release.
By moments like this one. Chris Reyes, CBC News, Guelph, Ontario.
Still to come here on CBC Windsor News at 6. It'll be in the mid-40s with the humidity tomorrow, and there's some rain in the forecast. All of those details are coming up right after the break. Severe weather pounded parts of Alberta over the long weekend. Dangerous winds, a tornado, and baseball-sized hail hit several regions. The CBC's Corey Seegers is tracking the aftermath and the damage.
The last few days have seen a series of watches and warnings for heat, thunderstorms, and tornadoes. The community of Hines Creek, about 600 kilometers northwest of Edmonton, is still cleaning up after a major storm hit that village Friday. Environment Canada is trying to determine if the system that tore roofs from buildings and toppled trees was a straight-line wind or a tornado.
It's turning, guys.
In central Alberta, a dramatic sight Sunday evening after a tornado touched down near the town of Coronation. Marky Bossert was at her family's farm when they saw the storm rolling in and ran for cover.
We went inside, and then we were inside, and it sounded scary, and obviously it was just windy, and there was like, I don't know, nickel-sized hail. No damage or anything like that, but that was definitely as close as I needed it to be.
Campers near Burnstick Lake were awoken to a wicked storm on Monday. I spoke to a family who was preparing to evacuate their campsite after seeing lightning in the distance. Gloria Jones O'Malley told me before they could get out, the storm was on them and it was deafening. Trees fell and punctured their camper, where her 2-year-old was sleeping moments before. O'Malley told me so many trees came down during the storm, they needed a chainsaw to cut themselves a path out of the area. Environment Canada says things will remain unstable this week, meaning more severe weather is expected. Corey Seegers, CBC News, Edmonton.
And time now for a look at weather. For that, we are joined by Dahlia Ashry. Thankfully, Dahlia, nothing like we saw in Alberta in our neck of the woods, but it's going to be quite hot from what I'm hearing.
That's right, Jason. I mean, there are no tornadoes in Ontario, but from the west part of the nation, those winds and the rain are probably making its way and bringing that humidity onwards as well. So we're expecting extreme humidity tomorrow, and it's already starting off today. And those winds coming out from the west part of the nation onto the east, and those damp conditions, those showers. So while we don't have hail, there is rain that we should expect. So the normal high for this time of year, 27 degrees, and we're sitting well above that 30 degrees in Windsor, and normal low is 16. Again, well above that today with that humidex feeling like 20 degrees and above. Now, the current temperatures in Windsor, 27 degrees. That's a hot spot for the southeastern western region. Sarnia, 23 degrees, and London, 23 degrees as well. And with that humidex that we're talking about, it's really ramping up that heat, bringing it up to 31 degrees. Sarnia, 28, and London, 26. And it's just going to get warmer tomorrow, and damp conditions you can expect as you head into your work week tomorrow as well. So those clouds start to peek through right there. You can see the precipitation activity making its way. Heavy rain tomorrow around 7 p.m. And as you wrap up the night, well, we're going to start seeing those rains pick up as well into the morning, and major cloud coverage on Thursday and some precipitation as well. Risk of thunderstorms as well on Wednesday. Tonight, temperatures will cool down, but first, there are winds that you can expect gusting throughout. We're talking about coming from the west end of the nation. So winds are 23, those kilometers an hour, making it pretty windy in the area, and that will carry through until Wednesday evening. Overnight tonight, temperatures will be cool. We can get a break from the heat, 20 degrees, Sarnia 16. And as we look at the 5-day forecast, just stay hydrated tomorrow because it's going to feel like 45 degrees, but it will get cooler but damp throughout the week. Jason?
All right, Dahlia, I have to admit I haven't been using my sprinkler very much this year. So in my front yard, there are some yellow patches. It, could either be a lack of rain or dogs just love my lawn. Either way, the rain coming up, I know, will be good for us, I think, right?
Your plants are going to soak that up. It's going to say, thank you, Mother Nature. I need that break. I need that water. But the plants aren't the only ones who need the water, Jason. So do we. So stay hydrated tomorrow with that humidex.
For sure. Thanks so much, Dahlia.
Thanks, Jason.
A Canadian-born artist has created a mechanical suit, which is a mixture of Iron Man and a Transformer. You won't want to miss that story coming up right after the break. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi arrived in Taiwan despite China's threats of, quote, grave consequences. Pelosi landed on the island with plans to meet the Taiwanese leader and other officials. China views Taiwan as part of its territory. The White House insists the trip doesn't signal a change in U.S. policy, which emphasizes strategic ambiguity about who controls Taiwan. Pelosi is now the highest-ranking American official in 25 years to visit the self-ruled island. Well, as the end of summer nears, monarch butterflies will start migrating from many parts of Canada all the way to Mexico. They were added to the international list of endangered species just last month, and one of the key reasons for their decline is the loss of their habitat. But as Colleen Jones reports, one Nova Scotia man is on a mission to try and save a few of them.
Peter Vanderkluet has learned a lot about the monarch butterfly.
Oh, see the two dots on the hind wings?
I did.
That tells you it's a male. The females don't have those dots. Yeah, I love see the compound eye.
Monarchs might be plentiful now in the family's backyard garden, but a few years ago, noticing the declining population here, he became concerned. But how many of us move from concerned to citizen scientist? Peter did.
This is probably a couple days from turning into one of the pupae.
And from the pupae,
it becomes the butterfly.
He protects the monarch's eggs, one tiny egg at a time.
That little dot right there is an egg.
He heads to the mowed areas by the local Rails to Trails path. He looks for fallen leaves, holding the tiny eggs that would be easy pickings for the predators, spiders, ants, and birds. So when you went out to the area that was mowed, you were looking for things
those.
That small?
Yeah. It's like 2 by 2 millimeters or something.
He has become the monarch's protector here in his own backyard, taking the eggs into his house for them to go through their various stages.
You can see the little tip of the curl kind of below the eyes there. Yeah. It's a proboscis that's curled up, and when they protrude. It's really cool. Like, I mean, I kind of got into it because, well, I like them for one thing, and they migrate, the fascination of it, like just the uniqueness of the species.
He takes notes to document the numbers since he began this project 3 years ago.
300 in the wild sightings. It's a lot of caterpillars, 471 that I counted. The chrysalis where they came.
Is he making a difference? He likes to think so. He's also growing and transplanting milkweed, not just here in his garden, but in this new pollinator garden that volunteers have planted on Rails to Trails. When it's in the caterpillar stage, milkweed is the key ingredient for the monarch. Milkweed has been wiped out through the years because of pesticides, urban development, and mowing. But Peter, whose father Sam was a highly regarded botanist at Acadia University, keeps growing more. In North America, the monarchs are endangered, but Peter Vanderkluet, on his watch, in his backyard, he's doing his best to make a difference.
Oh, that's sweet. It flew right onto your finger.
It did.
Flew right onto your finger.
Colleen Jones, CBC News, Wolfville.
And a Canadian-born artist and mechanical engineer is trying to turn science fiction into science fact. He's come up with a wild cross between Iron Man and a transformer.
Okay, see what she's got.
That's Jonathan Tippett of Squamish, British Columbia, realizing a 15-year dream, piloting the world's largest four-legged exoskeleton mechanical suit, and it's called Prosthesis, and it weighs in at about 4,000 kilograms. Tippett is the inventor and test pilot. The machine is controlled by the movements of its pilot, strapped into the harness at its center. Tippett says the goal of the project is to create a brand new human experience. He says he hopes to develop a racing league for the machines in the future. Well, that's it for us here at CBC Windsor. Thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget, for news anytime, head to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We're on social media. Check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. And we leave you with some little bunnies, there they are, that we found in our front lawn this morning. They're so cute. Have a great night. Thanks so much for joining us.